Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Inariel Legends Dragon Hunt video. So today we're continuing on with our character evaluations. Yesterday's video we did all the tank heroes. I kind of went over where to use them, and I mentioned that the next one was going to be supports. The reason I'm doing this is because both tanks and supports are kind of like a flex position when it comes to your team strategies, where the other ones are kind of almost intuitive. They lay out where warrior, rogue, assassin, and elementals are going to be used, but they don't really tell you where tank and supports are. So let's get into that based on what we have going on here in the support. So first up, we have Jerry. Okay, Jerry is one of the best SRs in the entire game. He's used in high-end content. You'll see him with all the different teams that, the end gamers are using. I haven't needed to use him yet, but he's also only Eternal 2. Once I get him up to Immortal, maybe get some talents in him, I think I'm going to be using him a little bit more. I have been upgrading his skills, a little bit. And yeah, so let's talk about him. So first thing in his kit is he hurls Shadow Ball, and then when it explodes, it deals 400% of his attack damage and decreases the enemy's armor by 20%. This is what makes Jerry very, very good. As you see, you can upgrade this up to 30%, and whenever he is upgraded to, certain evolutions, this also does even more damage. So the affected enemies take 10% more damage from the attack for 6 seconds. So not only is it armor reduction, but then you also increase your damage by 10% more. Really, really crazy ultimate ability. He's just doing a little bit of damage. He does inflict vertigo, but what I've seen is Jerry tends to be more of a boss champion. He can be used in waves, any of the campaigns, any of, Realm of Clouds, stuff like that, Celestial Ring. He's going to be a strong choice. The problem is without him being any kind of healer or something like that, he's purely support, so he's a little bit squishy. He should be considered similar to like rogue status, where you need to have him in the back row to really protect him so he can get off his decrease armor abilities a lot. So here, again, just additional damage. He does have a silence on this active ability, which is good. He's your typical debuffer in most of these gacha games, but he's one of the few in the SR slot, which makes him really strong. He also has a pretty kind of unique passive. His initial energy is 40. I believe the energy goes up to 500. I don't know that for sure, but I think it's that because I've seen it in the Ruler of Trials, where you can pick out 500 energy, and I've always noticed that when you get that upgrade, your heroes are usually able to ultimate as soon as the match starts. So I believe that's right. But even starting above 0 is really, really strong. You can upgrade this ability to increase his damage reduction, and then if he's a Mortal 5, which is very hard to do and it's going to take some time, he actually has an increased energy regen rate, which is really strong considering that allows you to loop back around to his Ball Juggler ultimate. So whoever is up against Jerry is going to be taking a lot of damage. One thing that I didn't touch on the tank video is these exclusive equipments are very important. So you can see here, like, we just looked at Jerry's kit and it was already really strong. But if you then take a look at what his exclusive equipment brings as well, if you are able to get that, it just adds a whole different layer. So whenever you get that first copy of Jerry's exclusive equipment, his Ball Juggler, which I believe is his ultimate, yes, so his ultimate ability then gets an additional effect. So Jerry's Ball Juggler inflicts Pain Mark on all enemies, which can be detonated by other ally heroes' AoE ultimate skills to deal 50% of Jerry's attack damage. So you're breaking their armor, you're dealing 10% more damage, and then whenever any of those enemies are hit with an AoE ultimate ability, like from Baldur or any of your elemental heroes, it's going to do an additional 50% of Jerry's attack damage, which is really good in the Chaos gear dungeon. So I'll touch on that here in a second. And then also it says if Mark of Pain, which is this pain mark, the translation is not good. So if that is ignited, so if you use an AoE ultimate skill, it additionally decreases the enemy's turbo by 8%. Now what turbo is their attacking and then their movement speed. That really doesn't pertain too much, the movement speed, but the attacking is certainly a big thing. So if you can decrease their attack speed by 8%, just as a additional, consequence of using his ultimate, very strong. If you upgrade it the third time, it increases the damage of Pain Mark to 150% of Jerry's attack, so 3 times as much as the first copy of his exclusive equipment, so huge boost. And then this one, the last fortification of this, which is rank 6, if you ignite Pain Mark, it decreases the enemy's turbo by 25%. So again, more than 3 times as much. So these things are really important. If you're looking at someone's base abilities just on the hero, it might not tell the whole story because they might have an extremely good exclusive equipment, which I will touch on in a separate video. I'll rank all of the exclusive equipments and who you should prioritize there. But just looking at Jerry, he is a very, very strong support. So best places to use Jerry, he's certainly really good in Dragon Seal. Any of these dragons, if you can decrease their armor, because they have a lot of health, they have a lot of armor, you're going to be doing a lot of damage. The thing is, and I mentioned it whenever I was talking about them, you really need to be careful with a lot of these dragons' abilities because they do hit hard, especially the higher up that you scale into the game. So if Jerry's hit by like 1 or 2 skills, he's gonna die. So he's very glass cannony. You gotta realize that. Now, he can be used in basically all of these gear dungeons. However, I think he's going to be much stronger in Demon Fortress and Chaos Realm because they don't do as much damage. Void Rift, this boss hits very, very hard. Jerry's not going to last very long. And then the same thing with Shadow Cliff. So I don't think he's going to be great there, although I wouldn't be surprised if some people have used him. Let's see here on all servers. Okay, I don't see any Jerry's, so that kind of makes sense. There is one here on stage 18, so Dalvian is using Jerry. He is Immortal 2, and he does have the 5th fortification on his weapon, and he is level 260. So, yeah, that's interesting. That's a very cool team that he's got there. He's got Thea, which is another hero that we'll be talking about, but I would prioritize Jerry in this Chaos Realm for sure. It says it right in his kit. We were talking about how if he has his weapon, if you do an AoE on somebody, it inflicts damage to them based on Jerry's attack. So he's going to be very, very strong in this dungeon, as well as the Demon Fortress. I have a guide on this dungeon, and I talk about how breaking the shield on this boss is one of the hardest things to do. So if you have Jerry in there, you can really kind of minimize the amount of damage you need on the rest of your heroes by mitigating that with Jerry's break armor effect. So very strong there. He's going to be really great in Realm of Clouds, especially probably rotations like this where you just have 1 or 2 really big, beefy kind of bosses. You're not kind of overwhelmed with a bunch of smaller enemies. You just have these big guys that are kind of hard to kill. So Jerry's probably going to excel in areas like that. On top of that, I guess he can be used in any of the guild bosses that require supports. Same thing. He's going to affect, different areas. So assassin support or elemental support is probably going to be his strong suit. Pretty strong there. And like I said, campaign as well, Celestial Ring. All of those things are really going to help Jerry slot into some of your teams if you can keep him alive. The way that you want to set Jerry up is like when I mentioned about talking to him, you want to set him in the back row. So you want some tank heroes up front to really protect him, and then you would slot Jerry in the back here and make sure that he's just continuously getting off his defense downs or his armor breaks, and let your warriors and your rogues kind of just snipe these heroes really quick to make quick use of the battle. So that's Jerry, top tier SR hero for sure. Okay, so next up we have Mia. So Mia is a pure healer. Now what I've come to notice so far in the game is that pure healers don't really have a whole lot of use. I'm not saying that they're bad, but most of your SR heroes or your SSR heroes that you put in your lines, you're going to want somebody that has multiple different assets to them to help you clear levels. I don't think just a single use healer is really going to get the job done. I will say that the current rotation of Celestial Ring does really benefit just pure healers, and you focus on like one damage dealer, but that is completely out of the ordinary, and I think it's kind of an anomaly. But anyway, we will talk about Mia. So her ultimate ability places a aid gadget next to an area, so it's similar to like Joan's banner. You set up this ultimate and it puts like a little circle on the battlefield, and that's where everyone will be healed. It's based on her attacks, so a lot of games tend to base things on people's HP, defense if they're support heroes, but almost everything in this game does revolve around attack. It might have supplemental aspects like health, because it also mentions here Mia's attack HP. There should be a and there, I think. But so that's when gear, attack gear, your talents, all of those things are really going to help your healers maximize their healing on your heroes. If you're noticing that the healers aren't really healing very well, it's probably because you haven't been prioritizing their gear or their talents. So yeah, designated area, healing people up to 4 times and 45% of her attack. Heals up to 5 times within 5 seconds and increases their armor by 30%. If she is evolved, I don't know when that hits. I'm assuming maybe like Mythic or Immortal 2. You can see all of the evolutions here. So it is Mythic. No, hold on. It is right here, Immortal. So yeah, that's the big boost, is increasing your armor as well. So it's a very good ultimate ability. But again, if that's all she is doing, she's kind of just in the back row hoping not to get hit, and you're really depending on your front line to essentially hold the line to make sure that they don't break through and eventually get to your squishier hero. So it's a decent ultimate ability. She does have some active abilities where she's also recovering HP to whoever has the lowest HP, and then she recovers additional HP per second equal to 10% of her attack over an additional 3 seconds. That's if she's upgraded. Like I said, all pure healing. She does have 1 damage skill on here. She does have a passive that increases her healing and damage reduction, and if she's Immortal 5, she increases her healing by 15% instead of 3.5, which is a really big boost, but that's going to take a little bit of time. And then every normal attack has a 15% chance of resetting Life Injection, which is her active ability, giving your biggest heals. So also here, if she's upgraded, she can reset the cooldown of that Life Injection, and then an extra 15% chance of doing that, so it'll go up to 30, and then she restores 20% energy every time she casts Life Injection. So she's kind of circling back around and around to her ultimate ability, which isn't too bad. So, like Jerry, let's take a look at her exclusive equipment, see what that kind of adds. So whenever she casts Life Injection, which is that active skill, or actually, sorry, that might be her ultimate. No, okay, it is her active skill, Life Injection. So whenever she casts Life Injection, generate a small healing area, she restores 10% of Mia's attack HP for allies within range per second, so additional healing. It then will also increase the armor by an additional 10%. So that's if that's upgraded. Her Life Injection will heal the target ally for an additional 1.5 of her HP, which is much better than attack, at least in my opinion. And then if it's fully maxed, it increases the healing amount per second within range to 35% of attack, which is much better. So yeah, she gets really big boost, but again, she's kind of only just a healer, which in my opinion doesn't really come too much in handy. Like for the Dragon Seal stuff, you need all hands on deck. You need to be doing as much damage as possible. These guys do a lot of damage, so you have to kind of kill them quick. You got to like overpower them. That's the best thing that I have come to find. In Realm of Clouds, these guys are just too strong, especially as the levels scale. I don't really see healers being too beneficial there. The heroes that really excel in Realm of Clouds are like warrior heroes that have lifesteal or death immunity for a short amount of time, self-healing. Natalie would be a decent option because of her self-heals. So healers, I just think, are a little bit underpowered when it comes to those areas. I will say she probably fits well into Demon Fortress. As we mentioned on that video, you need that one big tank just to kind of take the focus off everyone else, let the boss hit him a lot. So they actually even show Mia in here. What she'll do is she'll be healing up your main tank here, so everyone isn't focused. Your main tank is kind of surviving. That's probably her key role. I don't see her fitting into any of the other dungeons as well. Arena, maybe, but again, most of those fights are just over so quickly, which is why pure healers just aren't great. Right now in the game, they might be used early on. I don't know. I've never had to use them. But I will say one thing. This time twist game mode right now that we have up, I mentioned it in the tank video as well. On your second team, there is this bleeding, ability. I don't know if it's going to be the same next rotation, but you lose a bunch of HP over time, so you really need a healer. This is where Mia would really fit in nicely. But this is such, out of the ordinary in regards to, this game mode. With so little amount of variance in characters, she's probably going to be pretty good in these guild trial yards, where you need support heroes to keep, some of your rogues healed up or elementals. So she may fit in there, but in my opinion, I don't think you should use a whole lot of resources on her. I think there are better options. All right. Moving on to our last SR. This is Thea. Thea, I think, is an extremely underrated hero. I think a lot of people underrate her because she was a free hero, but let's take a look at her skills. So she has this ultimate ability where she uses a medical device to support her abilities, allowing her to cast her active skills while she's on the move, which is kind of important in certain game modes that we'll talk about, and it increases her turbo by 25%, and then that skill lasts for 6 seconds. She can also use this ultimate ability to target an ally with her skills, and then it will prioritize the healing and support of those allies first. So the reason why it mentions this is because you can cast this ultimate ability on Thea. So if you cast it on her, it boosts her turbo, which is her attack speed, and her casting abilities, which you can see right here. So she'll be casting her active abilities more often. So I found it best to try and target Thea herself because her abilities are just really strong. She's casting, heals on people that have low health. They're also acquiring barriers. They're increasing their attack. So she's kind of like an all-around support. This is what you kind of want out of your support heroes, not like Mia, where Mia is just healing. Thea is increasing attack, she's putting barriers, and she's healing. So she's doing a bunch of things, which is why she would be a valuable slot in your team compositions, where Mia is very just one-dimensional. So that's what that does. If she is upgraded, instead of the effect lasting for 6 seconds, it doubles it to 12. She does have that heal that I mentioned. It's 150% of her attack. And then when this is upgraded, if you have somebody that's close to the hero that's getting healed, they will also get healed. So that's kind of cool. This one, she grants a barrier to somebody. It increases that ally's attack by 10%. And it lasts up to 6 seconds. They grant immunity and damage if they are hit with something within that 6-second time frame where the barrier is up. So you can really time this with some of the bosses and dragons, which is very, very valuable. So then it can also be upgraded to, up to 15%, and the barrier duration is upgraded to 12 seconds as well. So these are really strong abilities to have cast on your team, and if you can increase the timing, it's even better. So she has damage reduction and healing increase, and then her healing effect goes up to 15 if she's Immortal 5. And then she has this passive ability where the lower the health, the higher the healing effect. Healing effect is increased by 8%. So I believe that this pertains to her. If her health is lower, then the healing effects are increased, goes up to 15%. And then also this can be upgraded to increase the turbo of the targets healed by Thea by 10% for 3 seconds. So very strong support hero, giving your highest attack hero additional attack and a barrier. Very solid for tanks and your warrior heroes. Let's take a look at what her exclusive equipment does. So when Cruising Doctor is active, what is Cruising Doctor? Cruising Doctor is right here, this active ability with the barrier. So the barrier that gives people attack. So while it's active, it increases attack bonus by an extra 5%. So instead of 10%, it's going to go up to 15. When the barrier is breached, the person who broke the barrier on your highest attack hero will decrease their turbo, so their attack speed and casting abilities, and their attack for 5 seconds. This is really good paired with certain tank heroes that have death immunity. So if they have the barrier on them and it breaks, it's going to decrease the attack of their enemy by 5%, giving them time to heal back up. So that's pretty important. On top of that, the turbo reduction increases to 12% and the attack to 12% if it's upgraded. So from 5 to 12, it increases bonus attack to 12% instead of the 5, so you're going to get 22%. And then if it's finally upgraded, it increases turbo reduction to 30% and attack reduction to 30% whenever the barrier is broken. So very, very strong exclusive equipment. Now where she's used, she can be used in any of these dungeons, in my opinion, just because she's increasing your attack, which is really important on any of these bosses. You really need to have good DPS output to take down these bosses, because a lot of them, not only are they tanky, but they do have time constraints. So if you don't have enough DPS, you're going to fail from losing on time. That's really important to mention. On top of that, having your heroes survive, we've talked about Demon Guardian ad nauseum. Same thing with Chaos Realm, Void Rift. I mentioned this guy hits really hard. If you're able to time the barrier on your highest attack hero, it might save you and just get in that last pip damage. Same thing with Shadowcliff. You can see on the leaderboards as well, plenty of people are using Thea. She's a top tier kind of support hero, especially if you don't have the funds to go out and get all of these crazy, SSRs that they release. So yeah, that's that. She's going to be a good flex pick for Realm of Clouds, especially in this rotation. Like I said, when you have these big beefy characters, you need your frontline heroes to kind of survive, so those barriers and the attack buffs are really going to come in handy. Dragon Seal, we mentioned on her kit, whenever she targets herself with her ultimate, she's able to move around while she's casting her active skills. That's something that people don't understand in this game, is whenever you're casting ultimate abilities and active skills, sometimes your heroes don't move. They have to stay put. You need to move around a lot on these dragons. It's a very interesting thing, interesting mechanic. And then also on the higher levels of campaign, you have to move around a lot to avoid certain enemies. So if she's able to cast her abilities while moving, it's very important. So yeah, that is Thea. All right, so now we're going to move on to the newest hero that they just released, Elia or Elia. I don't know how to pronounce her name. She is known as probably the best healer in the game, but as we kind of mentioned with Mia, I think they're a little niche and only useful in really specific areas or timed events. They could end up being overpowered, who knows? But right now, I'm just not super impressed by them. So let's take a look at her. So she activates this thing with her staff with fairy power, and then she dashes to the targeted areas. So she's going to kind of teleport. She won't teleport, but she'll run to the area and then start healing people continuously based on the number of allies that are within a range. So similar to Mia, you're going to have like this circle area that's channeling, and that's where it's going to be doing all the healing. So it does it for 5 seconds, and it's 450% of her attack, which is actually a really high multiplier. It does come with the downside, though, that you can't move. And then this increases all the way up to 650%. So if you get her to Immortal, which tends to be the breaking point for a lot of heroes where they are useful into territory where they're like in your main team all the time, it says the lower the target's HP, the higher the healing, up to 50% additional healing. That is really big. So yeah, I mean, it's very strong ultimate, but again, one-dimensional. She does have an active ability. She aids the ally with the lowest HP percentage and recovers it for 5 seconds, and then the recovery is up to 240% initially, up to 360 if you get her skills upgraded. And then if you have her upgraded in her evolution, for the duration of this, the target additionally gains 12% damage reduction, which is a very strong buff. So this is where we're getting in the territory of not just healing, but also adding damage reduction. On Mia, you had armor increase, which is good, but it is nowhere near as good as straight damage reduction. There are probably enemies in the game that have armor break and ignore armor, things of that nature, so straight damage reduction kind of gets around that. Her other active ability is whenever she enters the battle, she protects all allies where 8% of the damage taken by each hero is split amongst everyone. So this is a good and a bad thing. You know, your heroes in the back row, let's say your allies up front, your warriors are going to be taking more damage. It'll split it among them, so your heroes in the back are taking that damage as well. But it's allowing your front line to stay a little more intact, giving people like Elia more time to heal everybody. So I guess that's kind of the idea behind this hero. And then it also increases their healing received by 5%. The joint effect expires whenever she dies. So this is constant. It's 8% of the damage taken by heroes is just going to be always distributed. And then you also have the ability to upgrade this during Mythic 2, where it says increased damage split of joint defense to 15%. So it may be more distribution. I don't know if somebody can explain that. That's a little weird wording. I can't figure that one out. So her passive is healing and damage reduction increases. And then once she gets up to Immortal 2, 4, and 5, this is something that SSR heroes have, where if you saw with the SRs, it just goes from Immortal to Immortal 5. With SSR heroes, you do get Immortal 2 and Immortal 4 upgrades as well. So her healing effect will go up to 20% instead of 4.5%, which is a huge boost. And then she also has energy regen rate increased by 5%, which allows her to cast her ultimate more. Another huge boost. Immortal 2, that's a big one. Immortal 4 is just an arena boost. And then Immortal 5, her healing effect is increased to 30%, which is really big. And then she gets 100 energy at the start of arenas. So very strong. I would say she's definitely more usable than Mia, but I don't know. In my opinion, I still probably prefer heroes like Thea, just in general, but whenever you're really going up against like huge, beefy, like one-man dragons or something like that, or this Realm of Clouds rotation where you have those big, hard-hitting enemies, Elia might actually fit in a little bit better than Thea, but the problem is you don't want to really waste the resources on Elia whenever you have Thea that's doing an okay job, but requiring less resources. But let's take a look at her weapon. All right, so Nurture of the World. Whenever she casts Joint Defense, which is that line that we are having a hard time kind of understanding, she radiates a healing wave around herself every 8 seconds, restoring 30% of attack HP for allied units within medium range. So it sounds like she's getting additional healing whenever she comes into the match. So that sounds pretty good, but she does need to be upgraded to do the joint defense, which I don't know. Where was that at? Okay, so it's only Mythical 2, which isn't too hard to hit, so that's good at least. It then increases the healing, the amount of healing to 60% of her attack. Okay, so increased healing reduces the trigger interval of healing waves at 6 seconds instead of 8, and grants the Forest Breath buff for healed allied units, increasing their armor by 3%, and it stacks up to 8 times to increase armor up to 24%, and that lasts until the battle ends. So every 6 seconds, you're going to increase your armor by 3%. So this is going to get really tanky. This is a really big buff to her kit. This is why exclusive equipment is kind of important. So not only is she granting really big heals, she's granting damage reduction, right, by a flat 12%. And then if you have her exclusive equipments, she's going to be increasing her armor by 24%. So this is pretty big. This is a real good damage over time hero. It's just one of those things where your tanks are going to get so much tankier the longer the match lasts, and she's going to be healing them up. So this hero, actually, now that I'm going over it, seems quite strong. Let's see what her Fortification 6 is, which is usually a really big boost. So whenever casting Fairy Blessing, which I believe is her ultimate, it is not Fairy Blessing. So I believe it's this, Blessing of the Fairy. Sometimes their wording is a little wonky in this game. So whenever casting her active ability, she immediately produces a healing wave around the target, and then Force Breath triggers, increasing the attack by 1.5%. Wow. And then it stacks up to 8 times. See, now this, if you have a Fortification rank 6, this hero is a great support hero. So she is doing everything at that point. Wow. See, it's nice that I do these videos because then I realize how strong a hero kind of is. But it is big investment. You know, you do need rank 6. But if you get that, you're getting, you're getting damage reduction. You're getting joint defense spread. So everyone's increasing their defense. You're restoring HP. You're increasing your armor by 24%. And then if it's Fortification 6, you're increasing your attack up to 12%. Whew. Wow, fantastic hero. So yeah, she is basically Thea, just a better version, but a lot of investment. So if you're using Thea a lot, and you really like Thea in those areas that I just mentioned, Elia might be, you know, top tier for a lot of those things. This is really making me second guess this hero right now, to be honest. So pretty interesting. I think I'm still passing on this hero, like upgrading her, because my issue is more along the lines of DPS, but I could just continue to invest in certain heroes and then maybe have additional supports to increase their attack and their longevity. So interesting. Yeah, strong hero. All right, so last but not least is Grace. Now we have to address the elephant in the room on this hero. If you see here, it has this fancy little word above her SSR that says collection. Okay, Elia does not have that. Grace does. What that means is if you go to recruit, in limited recruitments, you know, you'll have Elia here, which is she has her own banner. And you can use gems, or you can use these recruitment tickets to pull for her. Grace, however, can only be pulled with these special collection recruitment tickets. She is one of 3 heroes that you can only pull with those collection tickets. Now, they're going to be releasing more of these heroes as well. But with that being said, that means that she's extremely pay to win. She is very hard to get additional copies of. I would say that you need, I think the average that somebody did the numbers on is you need 70 of these pulls on average to get 1 copy. Okay? And SSRs, as I've mentioned in prior videos and even in this one, you really need to get them up to Immortal to acquire, you know, maximum kind of output on them, at least at a minimum, especially as the game scales. So these tickets, it costs 35. So 35 of those tickets are going to cost you $100. So, I mean, take this next review with a huge grain of salt, okay? Huge grain of salt. All right, with that being said, let's go in and take a look at her, okay? So, as most collection heroes, and we're going to show this whenever we go over the other heroes, but she's the first collection we've seen. All of these collection heroes actually have an aura or something that affects all like specific heroes based on this aura. It's called Leadership Might in this game. So this is something that she has. Whenever she's deployed, aka whenever the battle starts, she grants all ranged heroes. So I believe this is rogue heroes, elemental, and it might even be summon heroes. And it might be support. I don't know what falls into the ranged category. There's nothing here that kind of shows it. So it grants all your ranged heroes energy regen by 10% and restores their energy by 50 for 5 seconds after they cast their ultimate for the first time. So she activates as soon as she comes in. Basically, she just needs to be on the battlefield, and whenever your heroes activate their ultimate ability, their energy regen rate is increased by 10%, and their energy is increased like an initial 50 for 5 seconds whenever they first cast their ultimate without her having to do anything. I do have her upgraded to Immortal, so it enhances this effect, so their energy recovery is 100 instead of 50. So you're seeing here that she's very, very strong, but it comes at a cost. Okay? Now, looking at her skills, her ultimate ability, she summons alternate versions of herself. So there's 2 other versions of her, and it talks about it here. This is nice, but it's also a downside, and it says it here. The additional graces, they move independently, but also share HP and energy. This is tough because Grace casts, she can cast up to 3 versions of herself. So there's 3 different copies of Grace on the field, and if one of them gets hit, all 3 of them take damage equal to the same amount. They share HP, so it's really hard to kind of control them, which is, it's a good thing and a bad thing because if you have 3 copies of a hero, you're getting 2 additional heroes on the battlefield to deal damage, right? And that's the whole point. So then it says their ultimate skills are also vary based on the combinations. So the first time you cast this, Grace brings out Basest Grace. So it'll be normal Grace and Basest Grace on the field, during which Grace is immune to control effects, so she can't be stunned, she can't be frozen or anything like that. And all allied heroes enter this rave state for 5 seconds. And the rave state gives your heroes attack by 20% increase and their attack speed by 30% increase. Then, when you cast this ultimate again, so the second time you cast it, Keyboardist Grace comes to the battlefield, and then she's immune to control effects again, and all allied heroes enter the Encore Rave state for 5 seconds. So what that is they restore a bonus 30 energy per second, and then it can go up to 150. So the first time you're increasing their attack and their attack speed, and then you're increasing their energy restored by 150 per second instead of, 30 up to 150. And then as you increase her skills, the speed boost and the attack goes up. If you have her upgraded during the performance, all allied heroes' ultimates deal 15% more damage. And then whenever the keyboardist is present, so that's the second casting, the allies restore 15% more HP after casting their ultimate. And then if no ultimate was cast by those heroes just restore 120 energy, meaning if they didn't actually get to cast their ultimate, they will then be able to cast it a lot quicker by recovering 120 energy. So a lot in that first skill, right? So her active ability attacks enemies dealing 350% of her attack damage and decreasing their damage dealt by 10%. So pretty high multiplier, and it goes up to 500%. And then if you have this trait upgraded, your Basis Grace, which is unlocked on your first casting, unlocks the skill Heat Wave. And what that does, it releases sound waves and deals 350% attack to enemies upon impact, and it decreases their armor. So she has armor reduction similar to Jerry, but it's at a smaller percentage, while also dealing attack, increasing your hero's attack and their attack speed, and increasing their energy. So you're seeing that she does a lot of things. So her active ability, second one, is Grace restores HP for 2 allied heroes equal to 300% of her attack and decreases their damage received by 10%. So now she's healing. Now she's reducing their damage by 10%. And then if the keyboardist is on the field, it then activates this Revelry Cadence. And it says, following a brief channeling, the keyboardist, which is the second casting of the ultimate, grants a shield to 2 allied heroes, and it absorbs up to 400% of the attack that they take for 4 seconds. So her passive increases crit percentage, and then also healing by 4. And then collection heroes are slightly different than SSR heroes when it comes to the passive. They have upgrades at Immortal 2, Immortal 4, and Immortal 5, and Immortal 1, which I believe is around here somewhere. Oh, actually, oh no, Immortal 1 is the leadership might. Okay, so that's the difference. So they do get an additional upgrade at Immortal 1 and Immortal 3, where normal SSRs are just Immortal 2 and Immortal 4 and 5. Okay, sorry, back to this. So at Immortal 2, she gets bonus initial energy by 100, which is usually Immortal 5, as you see here during the arena, but now she gets it on PvE content, and her healing is increased by 10%, which is huge. She gets the damage boost and damage reduction by 12%, which is pretty standard for Immortal 4 on all enemies. And then her healing effect is increased by 20%, and then she does initial energy at Immortal 5. So she also has a passive that increases her max HP by 20%, but it gets increased by 30% if it's booked. In the non-ensemble state, which is before she casts her ultimate, when there are 2 graces on the battlefield, so you cast your ultimate and then the graces are just hanging out, they take 40% less AoE damage, and then when 3 graces are present, meaning you cast your ultimate twice, so now you have regular grace, basis grace, and keyboardist grace on the field, increases the buff to 60%, so she'll take 60% less damage on AoEs. And then if she's upgraded from an evolution, Grace and heroes in the rave state take 15% less damage. So, just crazy abilities. This is all just on her base kit without her weapon. So, let's touch on that now. Okay, so solo show, meaning the very first Grace, and then basis Grace's skill, Heat Wave, deal 15% more damage. So, her first copy of her weapon just increased her damage by 15%. If you upgrade a second time, Healing Ensemble and the Keyboardist, which is the second time you activate the ultimate, her abilities grant 10% more healing and shield absorption. Her rank 4 unlocks the skill Bounce Tempo, which is huge. After a brief channeling, Grace grants the allied heroes with the highest attack a 10% turbo bonus. Ranged heroes then get a crit enchance increased by 15%, and then melee heroes have a crit resistance increased by 15%. So this is just crazy ability. Bonus, crit chance, and crit resistance, and then her Fort 6 is even crazier. Upon casting Bounce Tempo, which is the skill that you unlock on Fort 4, it restores 80% of energy, and effective for both melee and ranged heroes, reduces the cooldown by 20% on Heat Wave, and increases the armor reduction by 15%, and it is effective for all allied heroes. So I mean, she's just like huge boost to your entire team. This hero is bonkers. All of the collection heroes are crazy good, but they are extremely pay to win. So if you're gonna go for them, I highly suggest that you target one or two specifically, and you just try and level them up as much as possible before moving on to the next one. You're gonna get more out of those heroes whenever they're in those immortal states than anything else. So longer video today. I went a little more in depth into that stuff. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this and it was helpful. You guys like these longer form videos where I go into detail about the heroes. Oh, and just quick thing, Grace is good everywhere, basically. I think a lot of people could see that, but yeah, thought I'd mention it. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys today. I'll catch you on the next one. See ya.